When we were thinking about this topic, there's one person that immediately came to mind, who is Adam Fry Pierce. Adam is an avid community builder, much like myself. We usually, have Zoom calls or sessions where we just geek out on community building stuff, even asking for help or, kind of like just brainstorming together on how community and design can foster each other. So we have Adam Fry Pierce, Director of Customer Experience Programs at InVision, joining us. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Preet. Thanks so much for having me. If it's okay, I'll just dive right in and introduce myself. Is that good to go?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Hey, everyone. My name is Adam Fry Pierce. I work at InVision. I help shepherd our community efforts, and I oversee InVision's Design Leadership Forum, which a lot of today is going to be coming off of what we've learned from this specific community. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and just tell you a little bit about what this is. At a really, high altitude, this is a global community of about 3,000 design leaders coming from all walks, all different kind of industries and companies of all shapes and sizes. Today, what we're going to do specifically is we're going to discuss the top design leadership insights that we've learned at a recent number of member experiences within what I'm going to reference it as the DLF for shorthand. So we've learned, quite a bit in a very small amount of time as to, how design and product and business leaders are responding to the pandemic and the, global economic shutdown. So I'm presenting the deck, but this work is really coming from a small but mighty team that I'm really, really proud to call teammates. And that's myself, Greg Story, and Mindaugas Petrudis. So there's a few things to go over. One is, what is the DLF? The DLF really it's a mission-driven organization. It's a private community who our mission is to advance the practice of design leadership by fostering a community where the world's best can learn from one another. We strive to make the forum inclusive and relevant to those confronting the challenges of leading design teams. And this mission is really important because when the pandemic hit, the community was kind of it was a perfect place for leaders to not only get some group therapy and commiserate and kind of just talk like what's going on and how do we deal with it, but it was also a place where we could talk specifics as to like tactics and strategy for how we can unleash the untapped value of our design teams so that our businesses can not only stay afloat but potentially do better on the other end of this entire thing. So over the last month or two, there's been a bunch of community events within the Design Leadership Forum where we had enterprise agency leaders, design, owners of boutique firms, where they got together and just discussed like, hey, what's changing for you? How are you leading your teams through the pandemic? And on top of it, most of them have switched into a remote settings. It's like a double wake of uncertainty, right? It's like, how do I lead my teams through a high anxiety time where we don't really know what to expect, on a month-to-month basis? On top of it, how do we work remotely? So this presentation is going to cover 10 top insights as to how leaders are responding to what's going on. On top of it, our team at InVision has been working in every way that we can to help teams through the crisis. We've been able to add value not only because of this community, the Design Leadership Forum, where we connect, leaders together so they can learn from one another, but we've also been a remote company since our inception. If you didn't know, our entire product offering is all about empowering and enabling product teams to collaborate better. And so our core platform and tools do this. And then our education and publication teams produce helpful books and reports so that, even if you don't use InVision's tools, that hopefully you can figure out some wicked problems a little bit easier by reading some of these books. And then also we invest quite a bit into community efforts like the Design Leadership Forum, where we just get together and talk. So we were in a pretty okay position, at least to plant a flag on the ground and have an opinion on how we might be able to get through this together. A quick disclaimer, it's really important to say a few things, and that's that this report has inherent bias. The data source is the Design Leadership Forum, which is mostly people who are employed. What I'm about to show you is promising information, especially for design teams, but we should first acknowledge that some teams have been cut, like entirely slashed, laid off. Some people have died. There's a good chance that someone on this call has been impacted by C-19 at a really personal level, and I'm not trying to discount that. Me and the team completely recognize the hardship of the unemployed, the pains of the pandemic, and the frustrations that this time is causing for us. So the insights, though, are a candle in the dark because, employed or not, the situation's fluid and we're all transitioning into the new world where we're going to be working together. So let's just dive in. Here's the top 10 insights that we're going to go into one by one. I'm not going to read them off here. If you want to take a screenshot, feel free. Let's dive into the first insight, which is that the digital transformation has accelerated. This has been going on for the better part of 4 decades. No news to anybody here, I'm sure. A huge emphasis over the last 20 years where the transformation really started to take off. But even so, if you are on design team, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. Business owners have really scoffed at design evangelism and the value of design, or even the importance of optimizing digital channels, even in the last few years. And so what we're seeing now is that digital has quickly become, not only the best channel to connect with customers, in most cases, it's the only place to connect to the customer. As one forum member said, the best way that they're creating buy-in with their executives to help them understand the importance of the transformation is just going where the users are, which right now is not in a storefront, it's on the screen. Taking that a little bit further, this gets pretty obvious when we look at B2C brands, so business to consumer brands. We're hearing from leaders at retail, restaurants, entertainment, and more that top business leaders are coming to design teams to innovate quickly and optimize for a digital customer experience. This will be most obvious for brands, I won't name brands here, but legacy brands that really prided themselves off this in-person experience who are now having to quickly pivot to digital. The next insight is that teams are already starting to design for the social distance economy. Let's just call a spade a spade. Things are probably not going to go back to the way they were for some time, potentially until we have a vaccine, which could be years. And instead of fighting this idea that, this entire situation might be temporary, many businesses have accepted that if, they're going to survive and if they are going to potentially thrive in this new world, that they need to begin designing for this new world. And so this goes beyond just optimizing the digital channels. We're hearing from restaurants, music halls, sports franchises, and others how they are actually designing for the social distance economy. We've heard some really interesting stories of teams coming up with some really cool and creative ways to completely reimagine the in-person experience and stitch these together with their digital offerings. It's really too early to call out what the winning strategies are going to be here at a really low altitude, but at a high altitude, the omni-channel approach is likely to win. So designers, this is going to be a through line pretty much throughout the entire presentation, is designers are in a really powerful position to understand customer problems and then bind these opportunities with the businesses so that they can build solutions for them. So good news for designers. Insight number 3, teams who are receiving investments to do more design are also reporting positive response to their request for additional money to systematize and operationalize. I don't know about you, but this was a huge surprise. If you would have asked me this question 2 months ago, like, hey, there's a potential recession hitting, huge economic slowdown, what do you think that's going to mean for design teams? I wouldn't have bet my money that teams are going to receive more funds to mature their practices, but that's what's happening. We're seeing that teams who are receiving the resources to grow are also receiving resources for design systems and design operations. So yes, the digital transformation catalyzed, but so has the investment to mature practices. As there's more design need, there becomes more business need to actually systematize and reduce waste so that you can operationalize and scale out your practice. Insight number 4. As I've said a few times, design is generally looked to solve really wicked problems for the business. And for teams looking to get a foot in the door, it's time to go to work. Designers are in the perfect position to help transform the business and mitigate things like burnout, wasted development and planning cycles, and frustration in general. So design activities can actually help turn unproductive multi-hour meetings into useful, hyper-focused 30-minute whiteboarding sessions where everyone leaves with a sense of accomplishment and alignment. We have the ability to hear all the ideas, throw the bad ones to the floor, and leave as a team and decide which are the best ideas for the customer and the business. I love this quote that came out of a recent event, which is, "Whiteboarding has saved our business on many fronts and no one knows it." So again, it's a good time to be in design. Another candle in the dark insight. Through the pandemic, leaders are reporting that their business feels more human than it ever has. Meetings are starting with questions like, "How are you?" rather than diving into the agenda. And back when all this was hitting us in the States in May, we asked the forum, the DLF, what's top of mind outside of your personal safety and your family? The majority of them said that they were just trying to figure out how to reduce team anxiety. And the majority of those respondents were not alone. They said that their boss was actually doing the same thing. Well, one member, as you can see here, said it's been a nice change of pace. Others have taken this a step further and said, it feels like we're in a tribe, feels like we're in a team, and we've never felt that way before. In a surprising amount of conversations, we're just learning that there's this increase in psychological safety in the workplace. And part of this is probably because we can see more of our coworkers' lives, right? Like we get to see inside their homes. You get to see my background right here. This is one of my spare bedrooms that we turned into an office. My colleague, Emily, I get to see what makes Emily when her cat dances across her screen once a day, or we get a guest appearance from someone in her family. We get a peek inside our CEO, Clark's office anytime that we meet with him. And on a rare occasion, we get to say hi to his kids too. So we get to see the human behind the people that we're working with. And that's actually changing the office dynamic for the better. This goes beyond just company walls, though. The entire insight about COVID creating a climate of empathy and caring goes pretty far outside the company walls. I was genuinely surprised when we asked that question. We asked a question to the forum, what's one question that you want to ask your peers? And the top response was, how can I help you? Others have asked members how they might even take this further to collaborate on social causes. So outside of their family, outside of the workplace, to their local communities. Some have even taken it upon themselves to organize events on helping their local community. And I'm sure for a number of people who are watching this video, you identify as that person. And if you are, thank you. Please keep going and let us know at InVision how we can support you. As you can see, my Twitter handle is down there on the right, but my full contact information will be available later. Let us know what you're doing and how we can support. So, insight number 6. I'm sure you felt it. The screen has democratized the team. The punchline here is that power dynamics are different. Everyone is roughly the same shape and size on a Zoom call or WebEx call, whatever you're using. It no longer matters where you sit in the conference room or if your chair height is, taller or shorter than the person next to you. There's less focus on physical location because teams aren't wandering around an office building. There's less incidental conversations happening. You don't need to float next to the water cooler to hear gossip or what's happening around the company. In general, there's just less impact from personal characteristics like dress, height, gender. Even loud voices have been forced or encouraged to slow down and be quiet because over video conferencing, there's certain limitations as to how people can communicate. So we're all adapting to working remote and we'll all continue to reap the benefits. And I can't help but wonder how this is going to change and impact long-term working dynamics for the better. Next insight is, again, another delightful insight that I wouldn't have anticipated at the start of all this, which is leaders are generally optimistic about the situation. Many are reporting that their teams have been experimenting with new ways of working in rapid fashion. As my friend and colleague Stephen Gates says, remote exposes your company's sins. And really what he means by this is that the general way of working together and communicating in the office is typically inefficient. If you say something in a meeting and you end up going back to your workspace, you can just lean over and correct somebody if you feel like they misheard you. In a remote setting, communication is so important, and often you have to over communicate. So again, what Stephen means by that is that there's probably going to be stronger communication practices and new collaboration standards on the other end of this. We're all discovering new ways of managing workflow and new ways to communicate. And we're already stabilizing in these areas in the very short time that we've all been in this quickly remote setting. But in terms of being stronger after the pandemic, this goes beyond just ways of communicating. It actually goes into innovating in general. At one of the recent Design Leadership Forum events, we had a member from a pretty large organization, a huge enterprise, raised an interesting point. They said, what about the innovation centers? And this isn't a real estate question, although I'm sure facility renewals might come up at some point if no one's using them. But this is a question about where the innovation is happening and how. High mature teams, if you're familiar with the New Design Frontier report, it all talks about design maturity and what that means. But high mature teams with experimentation baked into their culture have been recreating their sticky note covered conference rooms or their innovation studios in whiteboarding tools like freehand. Giving the team an endless whiteboard to be able to post their work. And This overarching need to figure out the whiteboarding space has actually forced the entire tooling sector to be able to evolve really quickly. For example, freehand, that's an InVision tool. I use it all the time, and we've heard so many requests from our customers as to how they want to use it, because it's being used by a lot more people than just designers. It's being used by the design team and non-design teams. The general lines between them are blurring because everyone's in the same tool at once collaborating. And this allows, our freehand product team, I can only speak for our company, but I'm sure this is true for others on the call as well. It's forced us to update and add new valuable features. And like I said, I use it every day. And I'm just getting so thrilled and excited by all the changes that we're making to help take collaboration to the next level, like sticky note featuring and templates. Regarding the tool though, regardless of the tool, designers are in a perfect position to be able to play a leadership role in answering these questions, like what happens to the innovation center? And we do that because we have ideation tools that we're all familiar with, regardless of what you use, and we can help those overseeing these innovation centers who are having to answer these questions of like what happens to this space. We can help them figure out how to replicate that in a virtual environment, and we can help persuade them that innovation, that this really important work does not need to slow down. We just need to find a new way to do it. Moving right along, being aware of the clock, I'm probably gonna just brush through this one. This one's it's a bit self-explanatory, and that's that teams might stay distributed. They're finding out new ways to collaborate, like I talked about. They're finding new ways to reduce team friction and communicate concisely. And while people do miss aspects of the office, there are many business benefits to working remotely. And it wouldn't surprise me if just a whole swath of companies just never returned back fully to the way things were. And some might end up staying remote. Remote might be the new normal. Coming into the home stretch with our last two insights. This one is a bit misleading, so go with me for a second. Travel is by no surprise heavily reduced, but travel spend was being reduced prior to COVID. Leaders were already realizing how much work can be done remotely in a distributed model. And the justification for getting on a plane will be much more stringent now that business leaders from all industries can see how much work can be done from the screen. I mean, we're seeing this even here with conferences like this that are being completely reimagined too. It's not just meetings, right? It's community events. And what Preet and the DesignX team is doing here is a perfect example of how we are reimagining these in-person experiences. But let's take a look back at the business and really think like, what else are people meeting for? Design leaders at events have reported, that they're having to basically reimagine hiring, reimagine vendor site visits, and really try to challenge themselves on how much can be replaced in a remote setting. It's another chance for design to help other aspects of the business solve their problems. One of our customers recently had reached out to our company to help them create a remote hiring process. And in their hiring process pre-COVID, when somebody was senior enough and they made it far enough into the design process, they were invited on for an on-site. Probably sounds familiar. And here's where they'd be checked for a culture fit. They might be doing long form design exercises to figure out how they worked, allow everyone to see how that process was. And how do you replace this? And that was the question that we got asked. Like, can you help us? You guys have been remote forever. How do you hire? How do you onboard? And there are definitely ways. And, while we could lend our experience just because we've been a remote company since we started, you don't need years in the field to figure this out. All you need is a motivated, curious team and a designer. And in our customer's case, it turned out that all the exercises can still happen in the digital whiteboard. They were using freehand, and the culture fit can be determined over a series of calls, emails, and team conversations. Our last insight is that the importance of needing to know how to communicate the value of design is more important now than ever. The importance itself hasn't necessarily changed, but the urgency has. Business leaders are looking for sea change ideas to innovate so that they can survive. These leaders that are coming, top line C-suite leaders who are coming to design, they're doing that for a real simple truth, and that's that design is the voice of the user. And you can best advocate how you might solve the user problems in a digital channel. But if you aren't speaking the language of your business partners, then you're probably spinning your wheels. You have an opportunity, and if you're a leader, I would say a responsibility to learn the critical skills of speaking the business if you didn't already know how to do this. You've got to step up and learn how the business works and figure out, how can it be changed? How is it changing in real time right now. And the good news is that we have some resources to be able to help you out for free. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Here's the big punchline for everyone who's watching this is it's time to lead. And the best way to do that is by teaching your business how they can actually make it in the social distance economy. If you want some resources that I mentioned, we've shipped 2 books in the last 3 weeks, which is absolute madness. One of them is Business Thinking for Designers by forum member Ryan Rumsey. Check it out. There's the QR code as well as the link, and I'll drop that in Slack as well. Full of amazing insights on how to better speak business. And then we also came out with this other one of, if you're finding yourself suddenly remote, check this out. It's the Remote Work for Design Teams, written by colleagues and friend Ben, Abby, and Greg. And again, go ahead and screenshot the QR code if you like, or check out the link. 2 more resources for you is that if you fancy yourself a fan of webinars and talks, we do have some upcoming talks that might be of interest, super related to most of the stuff I just said, better communicating the value of design, how to operate in a remote setting. Check out InVision's talks, which is basically our webinars page. And then this last one is I mentioned a lot of stuff about the Design Leadership Forum. If you find yourself identifying with this group, if you're a design leader overseeing digital product teams, and you want to go deeper into these insights, if you want to share your perspective, talk story with peers, join us. The community convenes often, and right now it's all virtual. Hopefully one day we'll get to be able to break bread in person again. Like I said, the criteria for joining is pretty simple. You just need to be a leader of a digital team. And so if you want to nominate yourself or nominate somebody just go to designleadership.com. That's it for me. Again, this was not just the Adam show. This came from the Design Leadership Forum team. Big shout out to Greg and Mindaugas for helping me put this together on short notice. And thank you, Preet.
Thank you so much. Thank you for, it was also quite a few insights were quite uplifting. It's not, the talk was not like, oh, we are all doomed and, everyone's going to get laid off. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, for sure. I'll look forward to hanging out with everyone in the Slack room, and I'll let you get back to the conference. Thanks, Preet.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Adam. Bye.